do it.
And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 3, episode 12. And we're going to go to the UAA today, ladies and gentlemen. It is the best conference in Division III men's basketball this season, I think, by a long measure. And I'm really glad to have with me Dave Klatsky, the head coach of New York University. He's in his first year at the Violets program. And Dave, it is wonderful to have you. You're riding high, 7-0. Thanks for coming on the QCast. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to be here with you, and I'm excited to have a nice chat with you.
Yeah, so let's just start off. Let's talk about where you are in this new journey of yours, and then I want to get into kind of the path that led you to NYU. But 7-0 in this point, you're coming off a 41-point win over Yeshiva. I watched almost all of that game, and it was an impressive performance. You have to be pretty thrilled at this point where your team is.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I like our group a lot, and coming into the season, we really had no idea where we would be and where we would be after 7 games. So, really happy for the guys. Really happy for the program. That game against Yeshiva, it was like after the game, I just couldn't believe it. That was one of those games in preparation where, in my own head, I'm starting to like think of last minute plays and last second plays, because that's what could have been. And if we played them 10 times, maybe a bunch of those games do come down to the wire. But on that particular day, we didn't miss. That's the reality. We didn't miss, and they didn't play their best game, but it was nice to see the guys play with a lot of energy and like they have all year, and play unselfish and play for each other. And the result was very good for us.
In that game, you had a really tough matchup to deal with, and the Zevi kid is about as good of a perimeter guy as I've seen in Division III this season. 6'1", kind of a combo guard that just can shoot the daylights out of it. I thought you guys did a great job on him. I mean, that's as hard as anyone has made it on Samet this season. I'm just wondering, coming in that game, what was your game plan for trying to deal with him?
Honestly, we compared him to Steph a little bit,
Sure.
because he makes tough shots. And when you watch Steph enough at that level, relatively speaking, a lot of those shots are like, we'll live with that. But if you're guarding against a guy like Steph, you won't, because they're good shots for him. And in watching Zev, I couldn't have been more impressed with his game thus far, and just his overall basketball ability. So the message to the guys was, look, we're about to play someone that you may play perfect defense, but you have to make him take as many difficult shots as possible. And there are going to be some that go in. Don't get discouraged. Just make them difficult. What we got to try and prevent are the backdoor layups that are 95% shots for him. And what he does really well, and what they do really well, is he back screens,
Yeah.
and then pops. And if he gets that rhythm shot, it's a great shot for him. So we tried to prevent those two things and just make as many of his shots contested with bodies around. And honestly, he hit his first 2 shots, and I told my staff after, but if you watch me on the sidelines, I was just like, yep, all right, he's going for 40. Like that's probably what's going to happen, because he made 2 tough shots, and then our guys really settled in and really made his attempts a lot harder, because the whole team was focused on him. So he's that good a player.
It was a great performance, and it's a funny game because in the game before you played Old Westbury, and it was in the same building, it was at home, and you guys were trailing by a couple points at halftime. In the Yeshiva game, I can't remember what the halftime margin was, but it must have been like 30. What the difference from one game to the next, as far as your team goes, what clicked from game to game there, Dave?
I think the Westbury game helped us significantly in the Yeshiva game, because the Westbury game, those guys, they bullied us. They beat us up. Like that's the reality. They were stronger than us. They played tougher on that particular day, and they almost won the game. And it wasn't like, if you watch that film, it wasn't like they got real lucky, we got unlucky. Right. They were getting layups, we were getting our normal shots, and they hung, and a couple plays down the stretch opened it up for us, and we ended up pulling out. But for us, and I said it to the guys, I was like, this is awesome. We're getting tested. How are we going to respond? and they responded in that game. And then for the next game, I think they focused a little bit more and got ready for a really good team and delivered and came to play that day, forgot what night it was, Thursday night, and really showed the country kind of who we are.
Absolutely. And we'll get into your guys in just a couple minutes. Wanted to first talk about your path, because I'm always interested in kind of what led people to this wonderful little Division III world. You played basketball in the Ivy League. You played at Penn. You played
Yep.
for a legendary coach. You were a really good player there. I know that you're on both the single season assist record list as well as the career assist record list. I assume, Coach, that you were a point guard since you were dishing out assists. Is that fair for me to say?
If you saw how tall I was, that would be an easy declaration. But yes, I was a point guard.
And you played for a guy who I believe Fran is still coaching. Is that correct? Is he at LaSalle?
He is. He just came back. He's now at LaSalle as the head coach.
What were
Yep.
the things that you took from Fran in terms of like your coaching style? I think every coach picks up things every stop of the way. What did you take from him that has stayed with you all these years?
He's the best. I mean, he's a legend. He has a way. His instincts for the game are off the charts. So he obviously coached, and he's still coaching. So this isn't completely true, but he coached in an era before all the advanced stats and all the numbers to back up everything. And his team has just played right, meaning didn't turn the ball over, took good shots, valued good shots, guarded against good shots. And he had a way of just being able to motivate, but while also bringing the team together. And I think most guys that played for him truly appreciated him as the person he was, but also the motivator that he was, and his ability to get you better over those 4 years or 5 years if you got hurt. But I've taken so much from him. I'm still very close with him. He's a mentor of mine, helps me in every decision that I make. And I can't say enough good things about him. He's anybody that knows him. The main thing that I'll say that I've taken from him that I've tried to get across to our guys is it's not about you, right? And that's one of his like major things. And if you know him at all, he's always helping people, and that's just who he is. And that's kind of fits his mantra of it's not about you. And I think that's a good lesson for life and a good lesson for any team, because you can't do anything alone. So you need help, and it's never going to be about you.
Very, very well said, and an important lesson for all of us, no matter what line of work that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
When you graduated, obviously from a very elite institution, you didn't go right into coaching, as I understand it. You went to work for a while as a equity analyst and trader in Manhattan, New Jersey. I'm curious. It reminds me. I interviewed Coach Damian Jablonski of Whitworth a year ago or so, and he had a path where he also didn't go coaching right away, but he very quickly kind of got the bug, and he ended up back where he wanted to be. What led you from that job to getting into coaching?
A couple different things. I mean, number one, you said it was the itch, right? And I was living in New York City where I'm back now, and working in finance and playing in men's leagues. And I always loved the game. I'm obsessed with basketball, and it just got to a point where I was, going to my job, and that alarm goes off, and I was like, oh, gotta go to work. And then would play in men's league, so still was connected a little bit. But I just love the game. I love coach. I love teaching. I love the like the finer points of the game. And about 4 years in, I was just like, I gotta get back involved at a high level. So I found Stevens Tech, which was right down the road from my office at the time. And Josh Leffler was the head coach at that time. Bobby Hurley was the assistant. Bobby's now the head coach there, and Josh is obviously at Johns Hopkins. And they allowed me to come on board and just be part of it. And I did that part time while I still had my full time job for a bunch of years. And then Matt Langle, who I played with, got the Colgate job. And
Right.
we talked through it, and he'll tell you he wanted to check me into a mental institute for leaving finance to come into the coaching realms. But it doesn't feel like a job now, and it's something I really enjoy. And living in New York City, not in finances, or I'm right outside the city, is a whole different world with a family rather than being single. But I've made it work, and I get to do what I love and be part of something special.
When you were at Stevens, starting out, you mentioned working for Josh Leffler, who's now the head coach at Johns Hopkins, uh, Division III school in Hoboken, New Jersey. What was that was your first exposure, I believe, to Division III. You played in
Mhm.
Division I in the Ivy League. What was your Division III is it's a charming little creature, right? So it takes a little while to adjust to be like, whoa.
Mhm.
What was your impression of NCAA Division III basketball when you got to Stevens?
I think everyone always thinks that Division III is just like, oh, it's just like rec basketball, or a way to for kids to play. And I didn't think that when I was helping out, because I knew a lot of Division III players. I played with them in the summer. I played with pickup with them, so I knew I knew the level of competition. But I think that was my first experience. Like, oh, okay, these guys are really good. And the first year I coached a guy like Waleed Fareed, who's now the head coach of Ithaca, and he was great, and we had a couple other players that were really good players that probably were Division I players,
Right,
honestly. And the commitment was there. Everything was the same except the off season,
right,
which you had no control over. But once you're in season, it's like you're essentially doing the same thing as a Division I program within limits. But as far as coaching and getting your extra work in and preparing for games and having them and being part of their lives and helping them in any way you can, it's very similar. So there are some rules to prevent that in the off season, but once you get in season, that was my first experience of like, oh, this is a high level. Like, the players and everybody aren't as big and strong, and that works just as you climb up
right,
levels. In the Patriot League, we're not as big and strong as the ACC. That's just
right.
how it works. But the talent was there, the commitment was there, the competitiveness was there. So it really did, I want to say, like, satisfy that itch that I had, because it was awesome. It was great to be a part of, and it felt like I was back involved at a really high level.
When you got the Colgate job and you were part of that staff, your first year you got there, you guys won 8 games. Towards the end of that run, I think in 1920, you won 25 games. Must have been pretty cool to be part of that building process to where Colgate ended up by the time you were gone. What was that like being part of Colgate? I think you were there 11 years as an
11
assistant. Talk
years.
a little bit about your time there.
A great experience. And again, so appreciative of Matt Langle giving me the opportunity. And in those first couple of years, it was tough. It was rough. We struggled, but you could kind of see that the building blocks were there. The culture was starting to get built. Guys were excited. And it was just a process. Like, it took a bunch of years to get to where the program is now. And it was fun. It was fun to be a part of. It was fun to try and build a program and watch Matt kind of work his magic a little bit. But we were all involved in getting those players that would fit the culture. And then the talent started to come, and then the wins started to come, and then it was a little easier to recruit. But it's not easy to recruit to Central New York, where there's a lot of winter months, a
Right.
lot of snow. But they got a great product. That was always the thing, is when we were selling it, it was a great product that really a lot of people didn't know about. So that became our jobs to try and sell that. And it was just, from going from where we were, which was like 321st out of 350 teams when we started, to winning 3 of the last 4 Patriot League championships. It was special. It was fun. The guys are on the team are great guys, and the culture is great. Matt's been terrific. Everybody that's been involved, the other assistants. So it was a fun ride, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it. And I was ready for a new challenge, but it was great up there.
And before we get to kind of that new challenge, one of the things in getting ready for this conversation that I was like, I know I'm going to like this guy, because you have a podcast, and I don't know if it's still active, but I listened to like 3 episodes, parts of them. Stat Chat is tremendous. I listened to your Sue Bird, I listened to Josh Leffler, and parts of another. And essentially, the way I would break it down is like you're a basketball analytics guy, and in these podcast interviews, you are interviewing people and asking them how they're using analytics. Like, you went in with Josh Leffler, you were getting into how Johns Hopkins videos their practices and games, and then what they do with the data that informs things they're doing. I was pretty fascinated by all of that stuff. Talk about, so just how did you get into the podcast? And then part two is I want to talk about analytics, but tell me about the podcast first and how that started.
Yeah, the podcast, I would call it still active, just a little bit behind on scheduling, because I got the new job. It hasn't been a priority, but I'll get one or two out there soon. Soon, maybe weeks or months. But yeah, it's still active, and part of the reason I did it was what you just said, is I have a lot of friends in the business and people I respect, and people that do things the same and differently than I do. And I'm a huge numbers and analytics guy, and I really wanted to learn more than what I already did. So very rarely did I have conversations with my friends in the business that I respect greatly about this stuff. So in one way, this was a way for me to learn and have a 45-minute conversation about analytics with them. And then secondly, I felt like there were other people out there besides me that also wanted to learn and hear about some things and dig a little deeper than, or dig as deep as a coach should be digging on these things. So it was for me selfishly, and also to give back to the community that I had stolen so much from over the years.
I would encourage everyone, if you just Google like Dave Klatsky podcast, you'll find it very, very quickly. And there's a whole bunch of episodes out there, and they're impressive. The quality of the guests is amazing. Again, I mentioned Dave had Sue Bird on there, which was fascinating. They all are. So check that out. And the analytics piece. So I'm just curious. I assume, based on the fact you're running a podcast about hoops analytics, that analytics must be a big part of the NYU men's basketball program right now. Like, how, without going into trade secrets, how do you infuse that stuff into your program now?
Yeah, it's a big part of our program, and it's not as much technical as you would think. On the coaching side, it's technical, but on the player side, it's more macro, meaning we try and run an offense that takes advantage of the things that lead to winning, which are good shots, open threes, layups, and free throws. And on the defensive side, we try to limit those. So I won't get too nitty gritty with the players, but like they'll hear me say, like, we don't need to take a long two with 22 seconds on the shot clock, or if we can force a guy to shoot that shot, it might go in, but over the long run, that's what we want them taking. So it's less like technical, even though I'm thinking technical, and we are charting. If you did listen to that Leffler podcast, we are charting about 30 to 40 different stats to gauge who's doing them well, and they all are things that lead to winning. Little plays, big plays, like all those things have different values, and we've kind of tinkered with it a little bit. But those things are more on the coaching staff side than on the sharing it with the player side, although they do know what some of those things are. But like we haven't, and only because of probably time, and that we haven't really like posted it and shared it like some of these teams do, and we probably will eventually, but we're usually a game or two behind just because of resources. But we do track a lot of different stuff and use it for gauging how we're playing as a team and who's playing well within that team.
Yeah, really cool stuff. I encourage everyone, just listen to a few of those episodes and you'll see very quickly what I mean. So okay, tell me about getting the NYU job, because sometimes you hear about a new coach and you'll read it and you'll be like, well, I don't see the fit there. When I read that you were the new coach at NYU, I immediately thought, well, that makes total sense. I mean, and what I mean by that is, you're coming from the Patriot League, you played in the Ivy League, and to me, the UAA is the Patriot League or the Ivy League of Division III. The NESCAC's in there too, but it seemed to me like, if a guy like you is going to leave the Patriot League and go somewhere to take a D3 job, but there's a lot of great jobs, but NYU, especially for a guy from where you're from, seemed like a pretty natural thing. How did this whole thing play out?
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that Stuart Robinson, our athletic director, agreed with you because it was a very difficult process and there was a lot of
I'll
good
bet.
candidates. And I was just super excited to get the opportunity to be involved. And then, like you said, I've put a lot of years in and tried to do the right thing and build that resume. And this job in particular, I think, fit me, and I was happy they agreed with that because I've interviewed other places and haven't been as fortunate, because anybody in the business knows it's hard. It's hard to get
Right.
jobs. And this is one that I always had my eye on too, because of the academic prowess and the location, all those things, and the upside of NYU's brand name.
Yeah.
All those things were super attractive to me, and I'm just fortunate that the NYU administration agreed with you and agreed with me and thought I was the right choice for this job.
Yeah, it just seems like really a pretty natural fit from an outsider's perspective. Again, I read the press release and I went back and looked at your background. I'm like, that's pretty natural progression right there. And to me, David, it seems like, you mentioned Stevens earlier and the fact that you were coaching kids there that were D1 caliber kids. And all of us that follow Division III teams would say the same thing. I think at Illinois Wesleyan right now, I think we've got some kids that could play Division I, and you could go right down the top 25 and say the same thing. It seems to me that the kids you're going to recruit to NYU, I don't know that they need to be any different than the kids you were recruiting to the Patriot League. Like I know it's Division III and that's Division I, but would you agree that you're probably going after a very similar model of young man? Is that correct or not correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think of the Colgate kids that we recruited, and a lot of them only had one Division I offer.
Right.
And in a different world, that kid ends up at NYU, right? Or
Sure.
or Amherst or Hopkins, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of how I'm approaching it, is that, do your homework, find kids that buy into what you're doing, that can really play, that value education. So it's very similar. It's a very similar recruitment model. It's just like one's Division I, one's Division III, and there's a lot of kids that want Division I at all costs, and there's a lot of kids that want best fit. And being in New York City, there's opportunities that aren't available at a place like Colgate, right? And I
Right.
think those are the type of kids I gotta focus on. And it was the opposite when I was at Colgate, right? If you were a city guy, like, you weren't coming to Colgate, that's okay. There's plenty of other players out there, right? And I think that's kind of how I've been approaching it. And I've only recruited 1.5 classes now, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm very happy with the recruits that are coming in next year, which I don't even know the rules if I'm allowed to talk. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about them yet.
Better
Um,
err on the side of caution,
yeah,
I guess, right?
and then obviously the two transfers that we brought in this year, in Spencer Friedman and Michael Savarino.
And I want to talk about both of those guys. Just one more question on kind of recruiting and everything. It's got to help tremendously that, again, you already know how to work that high academic world. That's a different world. Every Division III school has its strengths, and coaches know exactly how to go find their kind of guy. I think if you're not from that like crazy high academic world and you get a UAA job or an NESCAC job, you kind of have to figure that whole thing out a little bit more than you have in the past. Whereas I think you just roll in and understand how to find a kid from California or a kid from Texas or a kid from Chicago. Um, fair to say that that's a similar thing too to what you were doing at Colgate in identifying talent.
Yeah, there's a huge difference though, and I think we had a lot of success at Colgate, and Matt Langle's reputation now is off the charts, and he was an easy sell, but it was still, you walk into somebody's living room or metaphorical living room and you mention Colgate, and if they aren't from the Northeast or they're not in that world, they have to look you up,
Right.
right? And we'd still have to sell and convince and show what a great product it was. What I'm finding so far, and obviously it's only year one, is there's people out there that they really want to go to NYU,
Sure.
and they're really good players, and we come swooping in, and it's like we already are a couple steps ahead because of the brand and
Right.
New York City itself. So that to me has been a wild shift from like calling someone and knowing like, okay,
Yeah.
here's the good points about Colgate, whereas they already are known from a lot of different families' perspective already. And that's been a huge change is having kids really want to come and almost us not screwing it up
Right.
in reality at this point. So we'll see if that continues, but it's been nice to have a little bit different taste than kind of what we went through at Colgate.
Yeah, it's a very unique part of the UAA, and again, some of the conferences like that, and that,
Yes.
without putting words in your mouth, I mean, you go from Division 1 to Division 3, and you have a better brand name potentially
Mhm.
now. So that's really cool. Talking about your current team, Dave, really, really talented. I've watched Yeshiva a million times this year because I traveled up to Bloomington, Illinois, to my alma mater to watch us open against Yeshiva. So I saw them in person twice. I've seen most of their games, and pretty dangerous team. And my takeaway from watching your team in that game, that was the first time really I had a chance to watch a full NYU game. You have some stud elite guards with what I consider to be Division 1 level athleticism and quickness. You're a perimeter oriented team for the most part this season. I'm going to get into some of your top guys in a second, but boy, you have a unique mix of guards that are super quick and fast. Talk about just your overall style and that kind of perimeter orientation you have going right now.
Sure. And I can't not mention how good these players are without mentioning the last staff. I mean, they brought most of these kids in,
Yeah.
and they're talented, and they were on the brink, and that's the
Yep.
reality. So I give a lot of credit to them. Like a guy like Zevi, who's a sophomore, and as you mentioned, has definitely Division 1 athleticism and
Absolutely.
probably Division 1 talent. He's his instincts are off the charts. So he just keeps getting better and better, and he's bought in, and he's listening, and the sky's the limit for a kid like that. And you talk about some of our other guards, and Spencer Friedman, who was a Division 1 guard
Harvard,
and
right?
at Harvard and still is and could be, but he wanted to be in New York City and wanted to have the role he's having, and I couldn't be happy for him with the start that he's had, and he's just a really really unselfish, great basketball player. Then you keep going down the line, a guy like Michael Savarino, who's coming from Duke, who practiced against the best and knew what
Right.
his role was there. And same thing, he wanted to have a different role his last couple of years of college, and he's a winning player. We talk about those analytics and advanced stats. He is the leader in our advanced stats, and you would never know that by watching our team, but he does. He's always in the right spot. He's making big plays. He shoots it great. So those three guys are starting for us, and then we bring guys like Nick Lipovich and Sinke Stevens, who are both of
Right.
them playing off the charts, and Ephraim Reed, and who's a senior right now. That's just he's like the nuts and bolts of our team, just like so respected, never makes a mistake, and he comes in and plays his role and does it really well. So those are the guards right now that we're playing, but it's top to bottom. Even the guys that are role players are really helping us. So we play like you said, we don't have anybody over 6'6".
Not
So
yet, not yet. I'm checking your recruit commitments though, which you're scared to talk about. I see a 6'7", and there's some guys coming, I know.
we got some reinforcements on the way, but that's not till next year. So we got to play a certain brand almost by being forced into it.
Yeah.
But at this point, it looks great, and we have a freshman center, I guess you could call him, but he's not a center, in Quinn Clark, who is one of the toughest kids I've ever coached, and he's undersized in every game and underweight, but I'd choose him over pretty much anybody we're going to play just because of his toughness and his ability to be a sponge and do the things we're asking. He's been really impressive as a freshman. I can't wait to see what his next couple of years look like. But I mean, right now we have a very balanced team, which is why we're tough. But like you said, we're very guard oriented. We're going to play fast.
Yeah.
We're going to try and speed the game up, and that if you play us like that, we're going to be tough to beat.
Right. Statistically, just going down the list, Zevi, 19 points a game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Spencer Friedman, who's the transfer from Harvard, 17 points, 2 rebounds, 7 assists. Cinque Stevens, 10 and 3. Michael Savarino, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And I got to ask about our guy Savarino here. I'm sure he doesn't like to be known as Coach K's grandson, but he is Coach K's grandson. Has Coach K been at a Violets game yet? And if not, like, can we get this to happen? Is this going to happen?
It is going to happen. It is going to happen. He will be showing up soon. And we are actually heading south for our Christmas tournament. So I have a feeling there may be a Coach K spotting over that trip. But Coach K was great in the recruitment process, and I know he's excited about Michael having almost like a new start at a new school. So it's been the Krzyzewski Savarino family has been unbelievably helpful and excited for their son.
So your team is again off to an amazing start, 7-0. You know, a lot of chatter on Twitter, those of us that vote in the top 25, trying to figure like where you guys fit in the big picture right now, because coming into the season, NYU wasn't quite on the top 25 radar. And all of a sudden, I think it was watching that Yeshiva game, just the eye test. It was like, that's very possibly a top, 20 team. Strength of schedule is something that a lot of people have talked about. Now, you would have no say over this current schedule. That's something that would have been done prior. But Division III, Dave, is a quirky little world with SOS and RROs, and we'll quiz you later on all that at some next podcast. But how familiar are you with how like the resume process works in Division III? And I don't expect the answer to be you're an expert. Have you learned any of this stuff yet? Because it's pretty crazy.
Some, and I mean, I know from being at Stevens and following, I have a lot of friends in Division III, so I've always followed along. I don't really care this year. Like I had no say in the schedule,
Right.
and the UAA is ridiculous. So
yeah, you got plenty of good games coming. Let me tell you.
I don't. I'm not really thinking of it like that. Are we a top 25 team? No, like we shouldn't be. Like by our numbers, are we possibly? But I don't really care. I'm just so happy the guys are playing well and together that we'll see. I mean, our league is so tough. We got 4 more non-conference. So we'll see what happens. But I've seen some of the chatter. I follow you, and I know everyone's like, this team are they for real? Or are they not for real? I don't know. I'm with you guys. I have no idea. I mean, we've played a couple teams a couple really good teams really well, and we've played a couple teams that are struggling right now really well. So where does that put us? I don't know. We'll find out soon enough.
Let's talk about the league for a second. The UAA, the strength of the leagues every year varies. It seems to me there's always 3 leagues that are the best leagues: the Wisconsin Intercollegiate, 13 national championships, UW this and UW that, the CCIW, and the UAA. And this year, to me, the UAA is the clear toughest league as I look at it. And it's pretty nuts, Dave. I mean, if you look at what's going on, you got Rochester that is phenomenal. In no particular order, you look at Case Western Reserve, Emory just snuck into the top 25 now after that big win over Colby. Wash U just fell out. They're going to be back in. They're a perennial powerhouse. The Brandeis, the Chicago, down the line, right? What do you know about this new conference of yours and what you're walking into with the UAA?
I don't know much on the court. I know the reputations and I know how good a league this is. And it's part of why I was excited for this job is you're walking into, like you said, arguably one of the best conferences in the country year in and year out. And sometimes it's 1, sometimes, at worst, it's going to be 4 or 5. Right. So you're talking about 3 bids, usually some years 4. I don't think it'll be more than that. But it's fun. It's fun. Like I follow it closely. I love basketball. So I'm checking the scores like you guys all are. And the one difference is like, I have not watched one UAA team play. Like I'm not at that point yet. I'm just preparing for the next game
Sure.
and worrying about our team. And that's the message I've had to them is we need to keep getting better because we might be 7-0, but we all know that means nothing because we may have a great year and finish 7th or 8th place. Like that's the reality. So we're just trying to get better and put ourselves in position to compete with all these teams that we know are really good. So that's how I'm looking at it. And I'll eventually watch Brandeis because that's who we
Right.
open with in the UAA schedule. But I honestly, I check the box scores and I look and I'm like, I don't know who these kids are, but their stats are awesome.
What's really cool in the UAA is like some conferences, every team kind of looks like each other. It'd be like a perimeter oriented conference or that kind of thing. But in the UAA, like Wash U is like a Midwest type team. Like they have 2 6'9" guys. They play for 40 minutes at the 5, and they've got a 6'6" wing player that's a freshman that's really good, and they have all kinds of size. You got Case Western Reserve that is much more of a perimeter oriented team that has just a bunch of shooters and tough kids, and Rochester looks different. So it's a cool league, especially kind of adding the way you guys are now set up this year. And really look forward to watching. There's all these Twitter debates about like where NYU is going to finish in the league at this point. So this is going to be just a great season of basketball. I wanted to ask you before we close about the new facilities. So you mentioned like being excited to come to NYU and how special of a place that is, and walking into the living room and the parents and the kid want to already come there. 181 Mercer, I believe it's called. Tell me about what NYU has been building. What's it all about, and when's it going to be ready for you guys?
Yep. So currently called 181 Mercer. Naming rights are available, Bob. If you would like to pitch over some
I'm in. I
check.
just I paid $8 to watch a Rochester stream the other day. So why not just get my name on that building? Let's do it.
And it's going to be really nice. I mean, it's I think the total cost of the building is close to 2 billion in the heart of New York City, house in Mercer. We've toured it, we've walked through it, and it will be for all intents and purposes ready for our first UAA home game on January 20th.
That's
Now,
cool.
don't hold me to that because I have no
That's
control or
cool.
no say of that, but that's what they're planning for, and we're getting closer and closer to that. So we're all really excited about it, and I think it'll be somewhat of a game changer. The program, I want to say it's been 7 years that they've been displaced,
Wow.
and going to Brooklyn and going to Hunter and playing
Yeah.
in St. Francis, Brooklyn, and now we're at this Brooklyn athletic facility, which used to be Polytech, I believe. So it's hard. It's been we fight with gym time with intramurals and the women's team and the volleyball teams, and so it'll open up. I think it'll be great for everyone involved with NYU, and for those that remember Coles, which is where NYU used to play. That was a great place to play, and it'll be similar, and
Yep.
the location is the same, but it looks good. It looks great, and we're all excited for it, and I think it'll help the program for sure.
Yeah, that's right. How far away, by the way, from campus to that Brooklyn athletic facility? How far in a car is that exactly? I don't even have any
Well,
concept.
car in New York City is different than I know the Midwest is a little
You're
different,
right.
but
I'm picturing getting in the car. So I mean, how far is it?
in a car, it could be anywhere, from where our offices are right now at 14th and 3rd. It could be anywhere from 25 minutes to 55 minutes, but we all just take the subway. And
Okay.
it's
Yes.
about
I think in terms of
yeah.
Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, and there's not a lot of subway usage going on there. So what is it, like 15 minutes on the subway then?
Yeah, it's about 15 to 25 minutes on the subway. So it's not too bad. It's not ideal by any means, but our guys, it is what it is, and they've dealt with it well, and so far we've played well at home. So maybe we'll keep playing there if we're gonna be shooting 50% from three on a regular basis. But no, it's definitely been a hurdle more for probably the last staff in the last couple of years than it has been for us, because we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's
Right.
really, when I took the job, it was basically a 6-month issue, right? Which
Right.
was a 6-year issue for the program, and for me, it was a 6-month issue.
That's going to be pretty amazing to watch kind of the new era hit there in the new building. So Dave Klatsky, the head men's basketball coach at NYU, he's got his team off to a 7-0 start in his first season with the Violets. Dave, there'll be some people from the D3 world watching the QCast. They'll get to know you for the first time, possibly. I'll give you some final thoughts here. What would you like to leave kind of D3 and NYU Nation with here on the QCast today?
Again, I just think that is really cool what you do. And I know you have a nice following, and we all appreciate and support you growing the game and growing D3, because like you said, it's a really good product. It's fun to watch, and there's a lot of talent, and year in and year out, it's not as obvious as maybe D1 is with all the press, but like you guys are filling out your top 25 rankings, but it's so hard. I don't know how you do it with like
We just watch games.
if you watch maybe, but like it's so hard to like compare, because the Northeast plays the Northeast generally, and the Midwest plays the Midwest, and you have very few crossover games to give you those data points of like, oh well, the ratings in this. I mean,
Right.
our ratings after 7 games, it's been like, like
Right.
hopping all over. I mean, we've been going up, but it changes like 25 spots
Right.
every game, and that's just because there's not enough data. So yeah, I would leave your fans and everybody with enjoy this. It's a lot of fun, and we love it, and we all are grateful that you support us in the way you do.
Yeah, well, there's a little army of us out there that have a lot of fun promoting the Division III basketball brand, men's and women's. So really appreciate it. I know how busy you are this time of year. I mean, you got games, you're prepping, you got practice. Folks, that's Dave Klatsky, the head coach at NYU. That's the QCast Season 3, Episode 12. I appreciate you joining. Dave, thank you so much.
No problem, Bob. Thanks for having me.